You're not broken, you have traumatic intelligence, 10 signs. And if you've spent your life feeling different, like you see things others don't, like you carry a weight you can't explain, then this might not be damage. These might be the way your mind learned to survive. That is a quiet moment most people don't talk about. It happens in the middle of an ordinary day. You're sitting somewhere familiar, maybe scrolling, maybe working, maybe just staring into nothing, and suddenly you feel it, that distance between you and everyone else. It's not loneliness exactly. It's something sharper. Like you're watching life instead of living it. Like your mind is always a few steps ahead, scanning, predicting, analyzing. You notice tone shifts in voices before others do. You sense tension before it becomes visible. You read between lines that most people don't even see exist. And yet, despite all of this awareness, something inside you whispers that you're the one who's broken. That whisper didn't come from nowhere. It was built slowly, layer by layer, in environments where certainty was rare and safety was conditional. When life becomes unpredictable, the brain adapts in a very specific way. It stops assuming safety and starts searching for patterns. It sharpens perception. It becomes hyper-aware, not as a choice, but as a necessity. This is not weakness. This is intelligence, shaped under pressure. Traumatic intelligence is not something you study. It's something your nervous system learns in silence. The first sign appears in how you read people. Not just their words, but their pauses, their micro-expressions, the subtle changes in energy. You don't need someone to say they're upset. You already know. You don't need conflict to be visible. You can feel it forming before it surfaces. This ability often confuses you because it feels automatic, almost intrusive. But this is your brain trying to reduce uncertainty. When your past taught you that emotional shifts could lead to consequences, your mind learned to track them early. This is pattern recognition at an emotional level, a form of predictive intelligence that most people never develop. But it is where it becomes complicated. The same awareness that protects you also exhausts you. Because your mind doesn't just notice patterns, it holds onto them. It loops through them. It tries to resolve them. Psychologically, this is known as an open loop. When something feels unresolved or uncertain, your brain keeps it active, like a background process that never fully shuts down. That's why you overthink conversations hours after they end. That's why small interactions can feel heavier than they should. Your mind is not overreacting. It's trying to close loops that were never safe to leave open before. The second sign is your relationship with silence. Not external silence, but internal quiet. For most people, silence is neutral. For you, it can feel loud. Because when everything becomes still, your thoughts rise to the surface. And those thoughts aren't random. They are layered, complex, interconnected. You replay situations. You analyze intentions. You reconstruct scenarios. This isn't just overthinking. It's a mind that has learned to simulate outcomes in order to avoid pain. Your brain became a strategist because at some point, being unprepared cost you something. Over time, this creates a paradox. You become incredibly aware, yet deeply uncertain. You can understand others with precision, yet struggle to trust your own decisions. This is where decision fatigue quietly enters your life. When your mind evaluates too many variables, even small choices start to feel heavy. What should I say? How will they react? What does this mean long term? Each decision carries invisible weight. And so, sometimes, you delay. Not because you're lazy. But because your mind is trying to minimize risk in a world that once felt unpredictable. The third sign is emotional depth. You don't feel things halfway. When you care fully. When something hurts, it lingers. When something matters, it occupies your entire mental space. This depth is often misunderstood, even by you. You might think you're too sensitive. Too intense. But sensitivity, in this context, is not fragility. Its resolution. Your emotional system processes more detail, more nuance. It picks up layers others overlook. The problem is not the depth. It's the lack of boundaries around it. Because when you don't have clear boundaries, your mind starts absorbing more than it can regulate. You take on emotions that aren't yours. You carry tension that didn't start with you. This creates a constant low-level pressure inside your system. And over time, this pressure looks like anxiety, like restlessness, like the inability to fully relax even when nothing is wrong. But nothing is wrong. Your system is just operating on a setting it learned long ago. The fourth sign shows up in your habits. Not the visible ones, but the invisible patterns beneath them. You might struggle with consistency, not because you lack discipline, but because your environment and emotional state are tightly connected. When your mind feels safe, you function well. When it doesn't, even slightly, everything feels harder. This is because habits are not built in isolation. They are built within a context. And if your internal environment feels unstable, your habits will reflect that instability. This is where most advice fails you. It tells you to push harder, to be more disciplined, to stay consistent no matter what. But it ignores the underlying system. Real change for you doesn't start with force. It starts with reducing friction. Making things easier, smaller, more predictable. A habit doesn't need to be impressive. It needs to be repeatable. When your brain sees consistency without threat, it slowly begins to trust the process. And trust is what your system has been missing, not effort. The fifth sign is your ability to adapt. You may probably notice this in subtle ways. You can adjust to different people, different environments, different expectations. You can shift your tone, your behavior, your energy depending on what the situation requires. This adaptability is often praised. It makes you easy to be around. Easy to work with. But beneath it, there is a quiet question. Who are you when you're not adapting? Because when adaptation becomes constant, identity becomes fluid. You start defining yourself based on context instead of clarity. And over time, this creates a sense of disconnection. Not from others, but from yourself. The solution here is not to stop adapting. It's to anchor yourself. Small, consistent actions that belong to you, regardless of environment. This is where identity-based habits begin. Not what you do, but who you become through repetition. The sixth sign is your relationship with control. You don't always seek control directly. But you feel uncomfortable without it. You plan ahead. You anticipate outcomes. You prepare for possibilities. This is not because you need perfection. It's because unpredictability once had consequences. So your mind tries to create certainty wherever it can. But life doesn't always cooperate. And when it doesn't, your system reacts. This is where cognitive reframing becomes essential. Not as a technique, but as a shift in perception. Instead of seeing uncertainty as danger, you begin to see it as space. A space for adjustment. A space for learning. A space for growth. These don't happen instantly. It happens through repeated exposure to small uncertainties that don't harm you. Over time, your brain updates its model of the world. It starts to see that not everything unpredictable is unsafe. The seventh sign is your internal dialogue. It's precise, often critical, sometimes relentless. You hold yourself to standards that others don't even see. You analyze your actions, your words, your intentions. This inner voice was not created to hurt you. It was created to protect you from mistakes. But over time, it became too sharp. Too constant. The goal is not to silence it, but to recalibrate it. To shift it from judgment to guidance. This is where micro-reflection becomes powerful. Not long journaling sessions, not deep analysis. Used small moments of awareness. What am I thinking right now? Is this helpful? Is this accurate? These questions interrupt automatic patterns. They create space between thought and reaction. And in that space, you begin to regain control. The eighth sign is your awareness of time. You think ahead. You imagine outcomes. You consider long-term consequences. These can make you strategic, thoughtful, intentional. But it can also pull you away from the present. Because when your mind is always in the future, the present feels like a transition instead of a place. And habits are built in the present, not in imagined futures. Bringing your attention back doesn't require meditation or stillness. It requires anchors. Small, physical actions tied to the moment. The way you start your day. The way you pause before speaking. The way you complete a simple task fully. These are not productivity hacks. They are grounding mechanisms. They teach your brain that the present is safe enough to stay in. The ninth sign is your resilience. Not the loud kind. Not the visible kind. But the quiet ability to continue. To keep going even when things feel heavy. You don't always recognize this as strength because it feels normal to you. But it's not. It's built. Slowly. Repeatedly. Through moments where stopping felt easier, but you didn't. This resilience is the foundation of everything else. But it needs direction. Without direction, it turns into endurance without progress. This is where intentional habits come in, not big changes. Use the small, repeated actions aligned with who you want to become. One action, done consistently, reshapes identity. And identity reshapes behavior. The 10th sign is the one most people miss. It's your capacity for awareness. Not just of others, but of yourself. You notice your patterns. You question your reactions. You reflect on your behavior. This awareness is rare. And it's the starting point of transformation. Because you cannot change what you cannot see. And you see more than you realize. But awareness alone is not enough. It needs to be paired with action. Not massive action. Used consistent, intentional movement. One small step, repeated daily, creates momentum. And momentum creates change. So if you've ever felt like you're too much, too aware, too sensitive, too complex, maybe the truth is simpler. Maybe you're not broken. Maybe your mind learned to operate in a way that most people never had to. And now, it's waiting for you to guide it, not fight it. Because the same patterns that once protected you can now be redirected. The same awareness that once overwhelmed you can now be focused. The same depth that once felt heavy can now become clarity. And it doesn't start with changing everything. It starts with one small shift. One moment of awareness. One action that aligns with who you are becoming. Not who you were forced to be. But who you choose to become now.